I think we'll get started now. So good morning and good afternoon. My name is Alice Mount. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships and Events at British American Business. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar. We just have one house rule. We will leave time for Q&A, and there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screens to use. Please send those questions to me either personally or to the entire group, and I'll pick those up at 10 minutes before the end of the session so we can address those questions then. Many of us have been creating in-person events and we've had to pivot to web-based engagements. Here at BAB, we've adapted and enjoy using Zoom and MS Teams for our virtual roundtables and business briefings to keep sharing intelligence and keep bringing our community together. What we will see and learn today will take online events to a whole other level. BAB member, Brands at Work, are an award-winning experiential communications agency. They unleash the power of experience for leading multinational corporations across a diverse range of sectors, from healthcare, professional services, fast-moving consumer goods, and tech. They've been designing high-quality digital content and broadcasts for over a decade. I'm personally very excited about today's session. I know I'm going to be inspired, and you will be as well, by this brilliant team at Brands at Work, so that we can all create more content-rich virtual communications in the future. The BAB team is here for our community in good times, but more than ever, we're here for our community in challenging times. And thanks to everyone for giving us your time for this session today. It shows us that what we do is right, and it shows us that it's helpful, and that is our job and mission. Let me give a warm welcome to Karen Caden, Simon Boniface, and Simon Maine, who will be wowing us with their creativity and excellence in events and communication. I'm delighted to hand over to you, Karen, in the first instance to start this exploration and presentation. I'll be back to help moderate the questions from the audience in the last 10 minutes. Just remind you again, send the questions through the Q&A function, and feel free to do that during the whole presentation, and we'll pick them up at the end. Karen, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Alice and Lindsay and Emma and everyone over at BAB for all you've done to help us share today's event with the network. And that was quite a stunning intro, and I hope we're not going to disappoint in any way, shape, or form, but we are thrilled to be here and to share ideas, inspiration, and what we're calling the virtual rules of engagement to help all of you who are currently experiencing this unprecedented situation of social distancing that has definitely impacted the world of live events. If you could just pull up the slides so that everybody could see that. Thank you so much. As mentioned, next slide. Brands at Work is a live and virtual hybrid communications agency. We're based in London at the moment, but we also have a team in the States, and we're used to delivering corporate events for global audiences and creative storytelling experiences, moving image and digital content, and again, working with my colleagues on the phone, we put together today's showcase for all of you in hopes that it adds inspiration to your virtual events in these coming months until we can resume some level of normality. I'm going to hand over to Simon Maine to say a quick hello.
Hello, I'm Simon Maine. I'm one of the partners at Brands at Work, and my specialist subject is production. I've worked in events for over 20 years and delivered everything from the Pope's tour of the UK to, you know, festivals in deserted train stations in Brussels. So really happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
And hello, I'm Simon Boniface, the other Simon. I'm Creative Director at Brands at Work, and very much looking forward to showing you some good stuff today.
Okay. If we can go to the next slide, please. Here we are, 11 weeks into our lockdown Groundhog Day existence. And by now, if you're anything like us, we're all experiencing a bit of Zoom fatigue. COVID hit the events industry hard and fast. Overnight, major events, congresses, festivals, and gatherings were canceled. And we've been hearing from many that the pivot to virtual is hard and the learning curve is steep. So like I said earlier, we put this virtual showcase to share our experience with you. We're going to cover the simple and easy to follow virtual rules of engagement and hopefully inspire you to explore the possibilities for creating more experiential virtual events, not just death by webinar. So despite the major disruption to our lives and events, I've got some good news, everyone. Creativity is not canceled. We're having a slight delay with the slides there with Zoom. But yeah, necessity is the mother of invention. And when you think about it, the COVID-19 crisis has actually created an unparalleled sense of global community and sparked creative ingenuity in countless ways. We've never been more in touch with our emotion. Brilliant memes, house party apps, virtual beer tastings, Joe Wicks pee online, and dancing TikTok videos. And we are finding ingenious ways to maintain a sense of global community and connection. And there is so much joy in that. And while social distancing has become a part of our everyday vernacular, there are so many ways, like I said, to connect, communicate, and collaborate. So we think it's probably more appropriate to refer to it as physical, if you go back one, please, physical distancing. Because the harsh reality is that for the foreseeable future, until there's a therapeutic solution, vaccine, or other divine intervention, we're going to need to maintain a safe physical distance. So live events are going to look and feel a little bit different when they do even slowly return. But for now, the trend we're definitely seeing for the rest of 2020 is for pure virtual or hybrid meeting formats. And meet must, right? The show can and should go on because you still, as major multinational businesses, need to drive learning and engagement, attract and retain the best talent, interact, engage, and network, go to market, launch and sell, reward, recognize, and celebrate. So we're going to hopefully show you some ideas that are going to help you explore the possibilities for how you can continue to drive all of these experiences forward in virtual formats. And the good news is this is not our first virtual rodeo. We've been designing digital content and delivering broadcasts for over a decade. That's a long time before lockdown. So from training broadcasts and virtual town halls to online product launches, sales meeting, and all singing, all dancing TV magazine shows, we've been there and done that in digital. And I would definitely say right now it does feel a bit like the wild, wild west. So many virtual solutions out there, it's hard to know where to begin. We've been invited to present now on a few webinars for EVCOM, the EMA, and a number of others. And the most common question we are being asked is, which platforms do we recommend? As an agency, we are completely tech agnostic. We don't sponsor, promote, benefit from any relationship with platforms that would hinder our objectivity. And the answer is, it depends. The platform we would recommend for an event entirely hinges on the brief at hand and what it calls for, not to mention the client's available spend. And whilst this chart isn't comprehensive, it does show some of the many platforms we're currently working with. And I'm happy to say you'll be spoiled for choice with various platforms available to stream events and even build virtual worlds that offer brilliant opportunities for creative content delivery, networking, and gamification, some of which we're going to be showing you. All that's great. And also, more good news, it's all quite affordable too, but, and it's a really big but, designing a virtual event is not the same as designing for a live event. You cannot just plug and play. What's important to remember is that technology is a vehicle, it's not a strategy for event communication. These platforms are mere shell schemes, and they rely on the input of brilliant event strategies and awesome content to ensure audience engagement. Even the whizziest tech has a short-lived novelty factor, as I'm sure you've all experienced these last 11 weeks. So your experience strategy needs to be based on the story you're telling. How you ultimately bring that all to life should be guided by audience insight and creating experiences that fit around your audience's lives in this period of business and life disruption. So where to begin? It's not as easy as just saying make it digital, right? Digital behavior is different to live event behavior. The best virtual strategies blend the best of live, digital, and in real life to create a rich and dynamic audience experience. People's lives and schedules have changed for the foreseeable future. Their attention spans are a heck of a lot shorter. But if the content's brilliant and you're creating an experience that makes them forget they're remote, your audience will engage and human content will get a human response. After all, we all want great experiences. The more personalized the experience, the better. And if you've done your homework on your audience's preferences, then you're a step ahead. And audiences want authentic content that they can consume across all platforms whenever and wherever they want. So you really need to be thinking more in terms of broadcast TV production values and social media interactions and community buzz than the more traditional events design in an online world. So this might indeed take a different skill set to what you would normally apply to a live event. So your talent squad, if you go to the next slide, please, should now be made up of creatives, script writers, user experience designers, content producers, production managers, moderators, graphic designers, animators, video broadcast directors, and audience engagement specialists. I know that sounds like an overwhelming list. You don't have to necessarily have it all if it's just a simple webinar, but if you're going for an all singing, all dancing, full throttle production, you really do need those skill sets. And if you don't have them in-house, seek the support you need from a trusted partner or bring in freelance support or consultants that can guide you through the process. Right. So now the fun bit, a bit of eye candy and inspiration. We've structured this webinar as a bit of infotainment, a mix of ideas, inspiration, and best practices that we hope will serve as a useful guide. And like I said, we're calling them the virtual rules of engagement, a top 10 list. So I'm now going to hand over to Simon Boniface to share rule number 1.
Thank you, Karen. It all begins with your story and really the very reason for hosting your event in the first place. It's not a case of just cutting and pasting, as Karen just explained. What works live doesn't necessarily work in a virtual environment. So really you have to kind of go back to the start, clean sheet of paper, and start to reimagine what your event could be, and start with really what is essentially a great idea and a great story at the heart. If you just go to the next slide, please. I'm sure you've all noticed that one virtual or one digital platform that's doing very well at the moment is Netflix. I'm sure you've all spent a fair amount of time watching the exploits of Joe Exotic over the past few weeks. But what is it that keeps us glued to that particular platform? What is it so great about it? It's a perfect synergy of platform working with content. You know, it's a great experience. It's really easy to use. It knows what you want to watch, but really at the heart of it, it's great content. And we keep coming back to this stuff. We're hooked. We want to tune in. We want to watch the next episode. We want to find out what happens next. And really, it's all because there's some great storytelling at the heart of all of this. Next slide, please. If you were to take inspiration from how a great story is told on screen, it would look something like this. This is basically a story arc that you can see here. I won't go through it in great detail, but this is a typical story arc that an episode of something might follow. It's about the status quo, crisis happens, something comes to the rescue, something gets resolved. If you were to overlay your business agenda and your storytelling onto this, you can create some real bite-sized episodes of something. You can really get really creative with your storytelling to get people engaged before the event, during the event, and after the event. It gives you a chance to showcase your characters, your people, your speakers, your characters. You can create TV drama style cliffhangers. Make real kind of bingeable, shareable episodes. Maybe you choose to space your event out over a period of time. It's not all in one go. Maybe you create episodes that last over the course of a week, for example. Could you reimagine your keynote as a full cinematic experience with fully scripted and with great visuals? You could, you can really, if you do all this, you can really kind of find ways to draw people in from the beginning, really keep them glued to the seat, and really kind of, create a sense of emotion and hopefully drive people to some sort of sense of action. Next slide, please. Virtual engagement rule number 2. I'll hand back over to Karen.
Thanks, Simon. So we don't have to be constrained by the same issues we have sometimes for live events. If we can imagine it and code it, we can make it happen in virtual. So why not, we make this term up, festivalize your format. Here's the point. Online gives you flexibility beyond 2 10-hour days in a conference hotel ballroom. By applying the concept of a festival to your design thinking, you can reimagine the format in many ways. Digital events do not need to be just rows of talking heads in rectangles, despite like what we're doing right now. Combine your channels, mix up your media to keep your audience hooked. Create different content experiences that cater for different tastes on different days. Podcasts, on-demand films, interactive video, game shows and quizzes. team building challenges, comedy breaks and live music, masterclasses, inspiring keynotes, commercial breaks, and even perhaps, you know, a flash mob opening theatrical moment. All of this will help deliver digital diversity. Even some of the more traditional formats can be reimagined into dynamic debates, chat shows a la Graham Norton or Jimmy Kimmel, news channel style interviews, virtual grapevine sessions to tap into cultural insights. Many of you will have speakers within your organizations who know how to command the stage when it's live and who fall apart a little bit when it's on video, or vice versa. Somebody who's a little more shy and reticent might really come out of their shell in this situation. So it's really about playing to the strengths of the different speakers and their content and thinking about imaginative ways to bring their stories to life. But remember, it's all about embracing dialogue, not dictation. So why not leverage the creativity your audience has alongside the power of your chosen tech? Consider how you can weave co-creation and collaboration into your digital events. From co-creating stories together in a game of online consequences to creating dynamic and organic collaborative artwork using digital whiteboards. Our own creative team has been using a brilliant tool called Miro, which is pictured in the top right. It can plug into many Zoom webinars and anything else that you're doing. And that's just a wonderful tool for virtual brainstorms, for example.
Right. So virtual rule of engagement number 3, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Now, Winston Churchill famously said many, many moons ago that for every minute of speaking that he delivers, he would spend 1 hour of practice and rehearsal. So virtual events should kind of take the same sort of rule as well. We don't want all virtual events and presentations to look like bad Zoom calls in the dark with messy backdrops behind them and bad sound. We want to consider the environment that we're in to give us the best possible chance of looking and sounding great on camera. There's nothing to say in the virtual world that we can't still have all of those high production values that we've come to cherish. So ultimately, it really does take some practice and preparation to deliver good virtual. Now, this is some good news, John Krasinski, and you can see his studio is actually his home office, but with just the addition of a decent camera, some lighting, a fun backdrop behind him, it's actually created a fantastic kind of brand, which is ultimately driven by great content. And that's what's the key with anything. We have to make sure that our speakers are supported with great content. Now, with content, maybe what might have been a 45-minute presentation on a keynote stage should really be no more than 15 minutes. I mean, we should all kind of like take heed to what Ted has been telling us for years. You know, online attention spans are much, much shorter, and we're distracted by phones and emails popping in and all sorts of other things. So your content needs to be short, pithy, and engaging. I mean, it really is everything. And that needs to be supplemented, you know, with beautiful graphics and videos, all of the things, again, that we would have in a live show. Great script writing. I mean, again, just because it's virtual, don't think, oh, well, I'll wing it with a PowerPoint deck like I would do in a conference call or in a boardroom. I mean, we do need to treat this as if we were presenting live on stage to a live audience, and with all of the commitment that that takes. You know, no matter where speakers are in the world as well, they should have that same level of preparation. And we, as you know, as event producers, it's our responsibility to give them, you know, remote direction and coaching and helping them, you know, to get the right setups and to have the right studio, home studio toolkit, etc. Send out briefing packs, rehearse them before. I mean, it really is no difference. You know, live show versus virtual show should, you know, employ the same, you know, principles and quality controls that we would expect from the live environment. So rule number 4.
Right. I've got chats appearing left, right, and center. Lots of questions flying in, which is great. We'll be definitely getting to those. Virtual rule of engagement number 4, involve your audience. Remember that attention spans are short and distraction is only one click away. So we're going to practice what we preach and ask you all, if you have them handy, to grab your phones right now. One of the great opportunities for virtual events is second screen engagement. So let's show you what we mean with a little icebreaker involving all of you right now. So phones at the ready. Next slide, please. we're going to ask you to go into your browsers and type in www.menti.com. Enter the code 349362 and share with us your lockdown experience or lockdown story in one word. If you do that now, we'll be able to pull up the results in just a moment. We should start to be getting some results. If we pull those up and the collage will slowly build. Roller coaster, couch to 5K, well done. Somebody's motivated. Homeschooling, I feel you on that. I've got a 4-year-old who just went back to nursery and it's been life-changing. Repetitive, definitely. Groundhog Day. Baking, there's a lot of banana bread buzz going on right now. Glad to hear somebody's had a relaxing time. Wonderful. Delivery, busy mode. Exactly. So there you go. You get a sense. The more we can involve our audience, get their views, you start to really build a brilliant portrait. Here we got some incredible diversity from people who have been, you know, taking on exercise through to being on a roller coaster of either emotions or exhaustion and homeschooling. And you really start to get a sense of your audience and bring their voice into the event narrative. So thank you all very much for participating in that little social experiment. Right, so onto the rhythm of engagement in an online world. What does that even look like? We've said that we're in a battle for attention spans, and it's so important to keep your audience with you, but it is harder to engage them online. So it's super essential to vary content delivery and visual stimuli to keep your audiences engaged. You need to condense your subject matter, as Simon said earlier, both Simons, but as Simon Maine said earlier. Think TED Talks, what was 45 minutes on a live stage is now 15 minutes in an online world. Make it bite-sized and snackable. Hold their interest, you know, through punchy and creative delivery, animation, surprising presentation styles, and varied formats. But keep on involving your audience. Break up the steady flow of content with beats of interaction with your audience, and keep switching the way you engage with them. So maybe a 15-minute welcome is then over to the audience for an energizer like we just did now. Maybe another interactive presentation that involves the audience features live polling or reverse Q&A, one of my favorite techniques. Or a dynamic debate from the virtual stage is followed by the audience having their final say with floor debates. The moral of the story is keep sprinkling moments for your audience to get involved in the event narrative and sprinkle that throughout all of your live segments. So, we've said never miss a chance to engage. This goes beyond just your event days and also applies to the wraparound experience for your audience, from pre-event touch points through to post-event follow-up communications. Think dynamic invitations, maybe augmented reality, mixture of tactile card that launches a augmented reality video experience. A smooth registration process. I have to give kudos to Bab for today's webinar invitation process. It was easy, fast, and smooth, and that is really essential. Ask your audience. People love to have their opinions solicited, and it's really important and can help you shape the delegate journey. So ask what they want from their experience and how they want it so you can personalize it. Think branded games and backgrounds like we've created for today's presentation, and integrate social media elements. One of my favorites, Domino's, is one of our clients. We created Snapchat filters for one of their rallies, which I think was fantastic. And again, a huge opportunity is for crowdsourced content. We are seeing huge success with this. User-generated videos, a platform called Seen It, where you can turn your audience into your army of vloggers, creating content that we can then edit in a virtual studio and transform into brilliant storytelling experiences that again bring in their voice, and when people see themselves up on screen, they absolutely love it. Again, you know, mosaics using simple photography as well can be something great. We're going to be creating a theme graphic for one of our upcoming events using all photography from the delegates during lockdown. So again, a very powerful way to bring in the audience into the mix. And don't limit yourself to on-screen engagement. You have an opportunity to tap into senses and blend physical and digital experiences. think beyond the traditional brand palette, right? So we normally know what our color palette looks like. We know what video stings might sound like, but there are so many other things you can bring into your brand palette to extend it now, from sonic branding to even sensory branding. You know, what does your brand smell like? I remember about 15 years ago, I worked with W Hotels, and they had a signature scent, which was fairly iconic. And you might not have realized it, but it walks through the lobbies of every W Hotel property. And we had to bring that into the event experience on the live day. But you can package that up and send it to your delegates at home. So think about things like care packages. Can you enhance the audience's experiences by bringing things off screen and into their home environment or work environment? So here you're seeing a little mock-up kit of something you might be able to send to either presenters or delegates, including a mix of mocktail kits for the evening social program, brain fuel for learning and development activities, dry erase workbooks so people can do activities and brainstorm and doodle, high quality headphones if you wanted to create, let's say, a binaural sound experience. And like I just said, you know, a wonderful scented candle. Let's say you want to take your audience on a journey elsewhere by creating a guided meditation in Bali. You can do that, and you can really enhance it by bringing in other theatrical techniques and sensory engagement techniques. So speaking of sending your audience on a journey to other places, I'm going to hand back over to Simon Boniface.
Thank you, Karen. So the next section we'll talk about under rule of engagement number 6, virtual is reality. We're going to sort of take a little look at some of the platforms specifically and what they can do. A platform, you know, is clearly a great solid vehicle, but that vehicle has to take you somewhere. And so when we're creating a virtual event, we're expecting people to be glued to a little 16:9 sheet of glass, as you all are now, and everything that happens within there is under our control. And that begins with essentially how it works, and the first thing that you see, which is the interface for a particular platform. It really is a window into your brand. That's all you've got at that moment in time, and it should have enough care and attention as you would give to your company website, for example, or your social media presence. Some offer a really good range of opportunities for branding and allowing your brand to shine through. So for example, in the top left-hand corner there, you can see an event platform that offers these sort of three-dimensional environments, right? So this is almost taking you into three-dimensional space. But what you can see there in the background is lots of opportunity to brand. So this is for Domino's Pizza, and we're actually able to sort of take over that space and make you feel like you're in a three-dimensional event space. On the right, you've got something a little more flat, but is a little bit more intimate. So here we've got a very kind of simple space that has lots going on. We've got a branded backdrop. The presenter on the left is actually live. She's actually talking over the top of this slide, and she's presenting a video that's been made on the right-hand side. And what you see across the bottom there for the Boom Academy, this is where, you know, some platforms have huge amounts of customization built into them, and the brand can literally flood itself all over everything. And the important thing here is you really start to see the brand and not the platform. So as Karen's points you made at the beginning of this presentation, you know, what platform do you use? Once you get into this territory, really, you know, we're not experiencing the platform, we're experiencing the brand. It doesn't matter anymore. And this is a great one because it's very, very clean, very, very simple to use. It's really crucial that, you know, of course, it's got to be really good for mobile. People are going to start to be moving around a little bit more in the coming weeks and months. So mobile is starting to become a very important tool in your arsenal for your event. On the right-hand side, you can see once you actually get into this particular platform, this is a really interesting one because it's very customizable. What you see here is essentially a whole bunch of windows, and each one has a different function of the event going on. So you're looking at the slides where it says Dream, Plan, Do, and the presenter off to the onto the left-hand side. Then you've also got information about the presenter. You've got a progress bar to tell you how far into the event you are. There's a suitcase there of downloadable content you've maybe collected throughout the event. There's polling going on, and there's a chat function, and all of this you can move around and have it exactly how you want it, but all within the really kind of like distinctive brand architecture from Boom. So if you could go to the next slide, please. You know, when we used to do live events, and that was, you know, we were very used to year on year, or season on season, taking people to a destination. You know, we were very conscious about where we were going and what we were going there for, and choosing places for their ease of travel, or maybe location to a particular headquarters or an office. And we would soak up the cultural surroundings. And obviously we can't do that anymore, but we can allow our platforms to give us a certain amount of creativity in how we do that. So again, on the top left-hand side here, you see a templated event platform. This particular platform comes with a whole series of environments, and this is an event lobby that you might find at a congress hall. It's a very familiar environment, so people are going to be very comfortable coming here. I recognize this. I know what it is I've got to do. I can click on one little column over there. It will take me to the agenda. I can click on somewhere else. It will take me to the keynote, but it feels like a comfortable space to be. Next to that, why not hold that same event around a swimming pool? You know, right now we have the option to take people wherever we want to go. So, okay, let's just do away with the conference center altogether. And here we've got a very similar sort of interface, really. You can click on various buttons, you can chat, you can download your resources. But here in session 2, we can watch a presentation and we're sitting around the pool. And this is where your care package comes in, because you've got to make sure you send out all the right cocktail mixers for when we're hosting this event. But then on the lower left-hand side, you know, again, just to reinforce the point, you don't have to even go to one venue anymore. Why not host each section of your event in a different global city? And you can, you know, your invitation can be a passport, and this is your passport to a global event, and we move around, we change environments, we create an experience around each location that we just couldn't do in normal times. And then the slightly strange image on the lower right is just to illustrate that really we're only held back by our imaginations. This again is a lobby, but you know, it's not designed to look like any space we know. It's a very game-like, futuristic, three-dimensional animated space. You can move around, and all of these little nodes, they all kind of move and pulse. But again, it's taking you away from the familiar. You know, we don't have to be tied to what we know. We can get super creative with this stuff. It's just where our imaginations can take us. And there are many platforms out there that allow you to go to these lengths as well. Next slide, please. So a major part of these events is obviously the keynote theatre. It's usually the flagship opening part of the event. It's where everyone comes together for one, you know, killer piece of content. And again, you can really play with the format. Again, you've got top left, something that feels very familiar, but on the top right, you've got maybe the chance to replicate a real life event. So this is actually Tobacco Dock in London, a historic conference venue. And we've created a digital version of that where you can overlay presenters and content. So it's taking you to a place you might have been before. Maybe it's a location that's synonymous with your brand and the story that you want to tell. Now, getting slightly more technical, on the lower levels, on the left-hand side, where you can see that lovely blue, what looks like a coronavirus popped up to say hello. This is a completely virtual stage. So there's nothing, you know, sort of, there's no sort of stage set. We're not trying to replicate real life. We're just creating a completely digital environment with content playing in the background. Now, these 3 presenters you see here are all being sort of essentially beamed in from 3 different locations. So for global organizations who might have people in different countries who don't want to travel or can't travel, we can actually, using very simple technology, bring those 3 people together into one screen so that you can get panel sessions going and you can feel like you're all in one place, even if travel doesn't allow you to be so. And finally, the one on the lower side is lower right hand side is a 360-degree environment. So this is actually a room, and with a very low cost Google Cardboard VR headset that we can post out to people, you can actually put yourself in the room. So you can turn around, you can look at the content, you can watch the presentation, you can even look out the window at the skyline if you wanted to. So again, all of this housed within many of the platforms that we talked about at the start. Some have better functionality for this than others, but again, depending on what experience you want to create, we can match the platform to it. But again, it's a way of making it immersive, making it feel like you're really there, and give people something a little different. Next slide, please. Finally, while we're still talking about platforms, again, a large large component to a lot of events is a show floor, a trade show environment where your sponsors and your partners might need to exhibit products, and this is always a a difficult one because, you know, so much business and so much networking happens on the show floor. That's a very hard thing to replicate, but we can create some virtual environments that give the feeling, at least, of being back in that trade show floor. So we have, again, virtual environments that have dimensionality to them that you can explore, you can move through, you can click on. And if you choose a stand to click on, you can see on the top right there, there's a Deloitte version there. On that stand, you have a variety of different functions. You can download content, you can watch product videos, you can live chat with people. And this is a really crucial thing here, is that you can get, you know, the opportunity to go one-to-one straight away. How can I help you? Let's strike up a conversation, which is the key component of for those of you who are familiar with going to trade shows. And on the lower visuals, there's two shots of the same stand there. Again, we can make it really three-dimensional, really immersive. This is, again, just the same thing. It's a clickable, explorable, three-dimensional space. You can zoom in, you can go around, you can click on the content, you can click on the private meeting room, you can go to the Genius Bar to ask an expert a one-to-one question. So there are still things we can do to try and bring that show floor element back into virtual events. It doesn't have to be quite as clunky as I'm sure some of the things you've seen. And really, again, it's just, if we can design it, if we can imagine it, then we can make it happen within a virtual space. So with that, I will hand back over to Simon to talk about the next one.
Okay, virtual engagement number 7. Variety is the spice of virtual. Now, live show and live events really kind of grew up out of the theatre. I mean, all the magic of the theatre can be brought into the virtual world. And here's a video that hopefully it might be a bit jittery in Zoom, but I'll talk over it as we go. But the important thing about the virtual world is we can create magical stage sets and magical environments using virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, projection mapping, all of those things. And, you know, these virtual stage sets that you see here, you know, can really replicate some of the magic of theatre and have live presenters or pre-recorded content beamed into them. The interesting thing here is that we can go wherever our imagination takes us. And, you know, in real life, for instance, we would never be able to afford to build a West End theatre stage production at a corporate event for one day. But in the virtual world, we could. You know, it really is just unbelievable, the opportunity that we have now for creating, you know, remarkable theatrical performances through the window of these virtual platforms that we were never able to do before. Now, we know that businesses are not standing still, you know, and you know, a key part of business. I mean, Simon showed us some examples of trade shows and, you know, careers fairs and all sorts of things. But, you know, product launches, how do you go to market in the world that we live in at the moment? I mean, this is an example of one of our clients, BD, Becton Dickinson, and they make most of the world's syringes and catheters and all sorts of medical things. And this is a tiny product that's about 1 centimetre long called their Pure Hub, and it disinfects a syringe before it is injected into a patient. Now, because that product is so tiny, at a regular exhibition or a trade show, they have a real problem trying to showcase the benefits of that specific product, because there's nothing to it. It's tiny and it doesn't really make any impact. But in the virtual world, you can make an impact with products by being able to do things like 3D fly-throughs and, you know, placing them in a virtual environment where you can see features and benefits and have somebody talk about that product as well. So quite a unique opportunity that the virtual world presents itself with. And on to the next slide, please, Dan. I mean, another huge opportunity in terms of kind of creating more variety is that we're in a kind of a lockdown kind of situation in most places across Europe at the moment. But here's an example of when we start to come out of lockdown and when we start to get into this probably transition period before we get back to doing lots of larger face-to-face live events. We're probably going to see the advent of more hybrid events, and hybrid events that maybe are broadcast across Europe, but have to contain different types of approaches within that model and different types of practicalities and restrictions within that model. So this is just an example of what we call a hub and spoke event, where in Amsterdam, for instance, we would build a broadcast TV studio. That would be the main hub. And for instance, if lockdown measures weren't that harsh, we maybe could have a small TV audience of say 200 people. And then that TV studio could then broadcast out to other cities in Europe, which details their own individual kind of circumstances. So it may be in Oslo that you still could have a small live audience, where in Madrid you wouldn't be allowed any audience. But the key thing is you could have presenters in each place in sterile zones using sterile studios, for instance, and have two-way communication between locations, between audiences. But then overlaying smaller maybe watch parties or events into that mix, or where if you're permitted to have, say, 10 people in a room, you could get a small team together to have a beer and a pizza and watch that event. Or individuals joining remotely to the platform from wherever they may be. So still being able to communicate through chat or through Zoom calls or through voting or through an app. But the point is with all of this is we create one singular unified experience where even if the audience is split to different locations, they can still have a collective experience. And it still means that we can borrow from all of the amazing kind of learnings over the last 50 years that broadcasters taught us. TV took off for a reason because it's such a powerful medium. Now, here's an example of another particular broadcast event that we delivered for one of our pharma clients. So they needed to do a really complex training program. So we stylized this training program around the concept of a TV magazine show, like a morning show called The Beat. And we had, a couple of hosts who kind of led the TV show, but then we were able to then bring in, like this chap here, Sonny, individual presenters from the particular company that were able to detail content, deliver messages, all from the comfort of this particular TV studio. Now, this enabled us to then do group discussions as well. We were able to, have musical performances. We were able to have intimate kind of like Q&As and learning modules. But the key thing is that this broadcast approach enabled us to take such a creative approach across all of this different mixed media, using different styles under the same kind of model with user-generated content, live performances, and these guys actually got up in the studio and performed an AC/DC number. I mean, it gives us the opportunity to think outside the standard digital platform. So in other words, we can use the technology and the platforms that we used many moons ago before digital platforms existed that enables us to do satellite broadcasts, live link-ups, etc. Now, one of the benefits of borrowing from the TV world is that we can really maintain those high production values. We can still have professional crew, show callers, television directors, auto cue operators, all working remotely through a remote production gallery. And we've actually got a product called Brands at Work Backstage, which essentially does that. It brings in presenters and feeds from anywhere in the world with a broadcast crew running the TV show for you. So it means that we can have different presenters, different videos. We can do lower thirds, we could do picture-in-picture, multi-screen, we can have group discussions, we can have breakouts, we can do anything that we would do within a standard television broadcast performance, but again, all remotely and all virtually. I think, importantly, we get to use the same high-end equipment that we would use when making TV shows. We're not just relying on an off-the-shelf plug-and-play platform that we could utilize. That has a fantastic purpose for lots of the other virtual events, but we shouldn't forget there's still the opportunity to create TV quality content in that TV world that we've all probably inhabited in some shape or form. And last but not least, we could even still send, remote studios out to people, subject to the lockdown laws, even if it's just a studio in a box with a good quality camera, lighting, microphone, green screen, to bring them into the production that way, with two-way communication from the TV director to give them coaching and to cue the show as if it was a live broadcast. Okay, next one, Ben.
Virtual rule of engagement number 8. Create shared experiences, network, socialize, brainstorm, chat, debate, learn, hack, team build, and celebrate. I did see that somebody asked whether you recommend breakouts, and we absolutely do. one of the biggest benefits, I'm sure many of you would agree, of live events is the networking element. And it's harder to produce in online worlds, but definitely not impossible. And we hope that we give you, over the course of the next few slides, some inspiration and ideas that you can take on board to create virtual networking experiences and team building experiences for your audiences, no matter how large or small. So some of the ideas you see here, a virtual hackathon or sort of Dragon's Den style challenge. We've had brilliant fun doing these with clients at live events, and virtual versions can be just as dynamic, using roundtable style brainstorms, capturing these ideas on virtual whiteboards and pitching them. And then, People's Choice Awards, you vote for the best ideas for further investment using low-tech voting options like green and blue cards. We love that sort of thing. I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard of Brain Dates, a simple concept that was developed at the C2 Festival in Montreal. That's all about connecting people and sharing knowledge. And they do quite death-defying stunts of networking, including suspending people in the air on floating chairs, and all sorts of other crazy ideas, like walking in the fine mist with a branded umbrella. But we can take this idea into the virtual world, and there's even an app for that called Brain Date. So that's something you can consider. Virtual Genius Bars, Simon mentioned that in one of the B2B Expo ideas, but you can do virtual Genius Bars or expert lounges where people can drop in for advice and tips, either one-on-ones or group roundtable discussions. And we can even, develop virtual lounges to facilitate networking, where you can do these things on a small or large scale, scaling up the number of rooms you need to incorporate, or incorporating complementary apps where needed. And then on to team building. I won't go into great detail about each and every one of these ideas, but this is just a smattering. Some of our amazing partners for team building have pivoted just as quickly to virtual as the rest of us, and they've come up with virtual solutions for time-tested and proven audience favorites, like the escape room challenge they can do virtually now, blockbusters, using an app like Seen It, getting people to go into a breakout room and having to script a storyline, brainstorm it, come up with the whole thing, storyboard it, and then film segments, put that up to the online studio, and we can edit it into the final film. So really great team building experiences that we can do. We've all probably experienced virtual pub quizzes by now. You can do that with celebrity hosts. And one of my favorites, the Global Innovation Game, one of the best live team building experiences we've ever done, and certainly a great option for virtual challenges where you can get people working in teams, in breakout rooms, having to ideate, pitch, work at a fever pitch to be able to come up with brilliant ideas using traditional and lateral thinking techniques. So it's a really great experience. These are just a handful of ideas. There are many, many more. And I think one of the really important things to do is to be relevant to your brand personality and tone of voice. So for example, for social programs, some of the ideas that we are going to share on this next slide might not resonate for your brand, but again, the sky's the limit. We can design and curate a program that is relevant to your brand, relevant to your audience, weaving these social programs throughout the agenda. So everything from fabulously fun virtual experiences like Grand Prix driving to virtual golf swing clinics with celebrity golfers, and and just being able to think about the ways that your audience want to be stepping away from the screen and having a tactile sensory experience. We've even been hearing from some that incentive trips for sales forces are being replaced with some of these money can't buy virtual experiences. So that's something to think about as well. But here you see just a number of ideas from, magic lessons with celebrity, Penn and Teller, through to gardening with Alan Titchmarsh. So there's anything and everything in between. And then, certainly your after hours program, you can have a lot of fun here. We've done everything from homegrown talent showcases, like, X company name has got talent, and being able to do virtual karaoke, lip syncing contests, you name it, we've come up with it. And then you'll see things that are happening right now in pop culture, like, DJ takeovers, 5 hours of, music on Instagram, get your drinks, bring yourself, get yourself ready to party, and people can send in ideas and then curate a Spotify list for afterwards. The big thing here is that the networking that was done at coffee breaks or in the evening drinks is probably arguably in some cases the most valuable part of the event. And we can create these bonding experiences. I'm not sure how many of you have seen it, but you know, Brewdog did this virtual pub quiz in Zoom rooms, just brilliant, a brilliant brand stunt, and it's brought a lot of recognition to them. And I take my hat off to them. It was a great idea. And there's so many ways that you can be looking to do that internally. Again, award shows, those things don't have to go away. You can still celebrate and recognize your people and create a sense of occasion. So do think differently, and don't think that you have to let go of some of these wonderful social aspects of your event programs. Rule number 9, be effective. This is the holy grail, right? People have been talking about ROI in our industry forever, and it's the holy grail that nobody ever seems to reach, but we've never had a better opportunity. If you go on to the next slide, it's about, you know, test and measure, measure and test. By going digital can actually capture so much information, from attendee numbers, tracking and online focus groups, to instant messaging, polling. You can see exactly how your audience was engaging with the experience, and take that on board, tweak, and deliver better next time. So this is a real opportunity to keep making sure that what you're creating is relevant and landing well with your audience. And this also helps, I think, for some of our clients who have to do learning and development programs where regulators assess whether or not there was high attendance. Again, a really important aspect. And this is something that virtual events deliver in spades. And then last but not least, rule number 10, campaign thinking. Continue the conversation before, during, and after the event. Just because your face-to-face event was a 2-day show when it was in the good old days of live, it doesn't mean that's how it has to look online. In fact, it might even work better if you spread it out over time to maximize engagement and make it, you know, more condensed, you know, a few hours condensed over the course of a week rather than 2 full-on days. Your energy levels and audience participation will be higher if you approach it that way, especially when people are joining from home and juggling homeschooling and, you know, cranky pets and husbands. And think about ways that you can extend the experience beyond the event. So again, a great aspect of some of these platforms is they have digital briefcases where you can incorporate all of the contacts that they came across, collateral from presentations, photography, videos, highlights, you name it. And another bit of great news, online events can live well beyond the live event days. So content is accessible for a month or even longer after the official show dates, and you can think of ways to continue to engage beyond the live show days. So that's a wrap. I want to leave time for questions. I'm going to put up the final top 10 list. We hope this was of value to all of you and that you enjoyed the chat. We now want to turn it over to you, the audience. And I know, Alice, you were getting quite a few questions. We're happy to take those now. And if more questions, you know, reach out to us. We're happy to connect to us on LinkedIn, and we'll happily take those questions.
Karen, thank you so much. And both Simons, that was absolutely brilliant. So much packed into this last hour. And a lot of you have asked if we can share some of the slide presentations and highlights from today's presentation. And the Brands at Work team will give us a short highlight film of the presentation with some important information that's in there too from the slides. But we've had some great questions, and thanks, Karen, for answering George McGregor's question partway through about breakout sessions. And he particularly wanted to know if you lose people when you go into breakout sessions from some events.
I personally don't think you have to. I think it depends on the nature of the event and, again, how you've structured it. But it's all about that engagement, right? If you're creating a structured activity, I do think structured activities work better in breakouts. If you're giving them a focused activity or a topic to debate or discuss, you tend to have better success. I think the looser you leave it, the more you give people the chance to opt out and wander off and get themselves a cup of tea. Mm.
And taking a leaf out of your book to bring the audience in, we'd love to invite a couple of the people to actually personally ask their questions. So Emma, who's helping on the back side of the technical Zoom, will help unmute Robert Azar, first of all, with your question, Robert, if you would like to join us with your question. So just going to Robert Azar.
Sure, thank you very much. Appreciated the presentation and all your efforts regarding it. Was just wondering if you had any suggestions for those of us who have to put forth programs that are entirely discussion-based. as opposed to one or two speakers presenting to a large audience that's rather passive and not discussing.
Sure. Well, a few ideas off the top of my head is to create structured conversations. You might have heard of things like World Cafe before, which is a great structured dialogue technique. Creating a bit more of a dynamic. So I hope I'm interpreting the question correctly. But let's say you pick up a topic and you might have multiple discussion tables and you want to cross-pollinate or cross-fertilize. You can break people out into Zoom rooms and have them travel after 15 minutes of debate and discussion, populating a discussion point, and maybe even a virtual scribe is capturing that before they get moved on to the next session, and another group goes into that room and adds on to that previous discussion. Again, it's about bringing some creativity to the format as much as possible. So things like debate is a great way. We had tremendous success with one of our financial services clients. Again, very serious content, but we use the format of debate to get across quite polarizing views around strategic imperatives. And so by giving, again, a punchy format to that, where each side, the opposition and the proposition, had 8 minutes using 4 people on each side to make their points in a structured format: point, explanation, evidence, link, and then closing arguments. We then swapped over to the other side, and then there was audience voting. So hopefully, Robert, that gives you a sense that, you know, you can bring creativity to even the most serious subject matter, and just bring a level of dynamism to just pure discussion that enhances the experience for online audiences.
And I think Robert's question made me think too about what's the best platform for straightforward group discussions. I know we're very familiar with Zoom. It works because you can have 25 people all at one time on your screen, but just to sort of, those sorts of offerings, those platforms still work quite well for simple group discussions, don't they?
Absolutely, but ultimately as well, if it is, say, something that could warrant a larger investment, a broadcast approach could also work equally well. You know, using one of the more hybrid platforms, using something where you were able to beam individual presenters into a virtual world, if it needed to feel like you had a collective of people together, there's opportunity to do that by not just defaulting to the things that we have on our desktop, you know, to explore what's available more in the professional kind of end of the market as well.
Great. So you could actually create that virtual roundtable.
Very much so. Yeah.
Broadcast help. Can we now turn to Natalie McDonnell, who had a couple of questions, but one of them does link into Robert's question too. And so if we can go to Natalie McDonnell.
I think she might be on mute.
Hello, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. One was quite similar to the other person who spoke earlier around roundtables. And I just wanted to get an idea of how can you engage with people to join a virtual roundtable, let them know it's actually going to be a bit more interesting than the usual. And I love the idea of the kits you can send, or the virtual, you know, the video cards, but as a business to B2B side of things, I'm finding it quite difficult to get people's home addresses. Now people are working from home. If we're sort of going out to prospects, you know, to people who aren't yet our customers. So I was wondering if you've got a way around that.
Well, why not create a little virtual kit? So you've probably seen this. Etsy, for example, do printable party favors and things like that you can bring in. You could create a virtual toolkit for an event with downloadable and printable assets as needed. For example, again, using that example of a debate or a roundtable, you could pre-print some hot topic cards, and you might have some discussion prompts on that, and ask your audience to do a bit of pre-work, put a little bit of onus on them to think about things and come prepared to have a rich discussion. I think it's really helpful to let people know ahead of time who's who, you know, who's going to be joining in this roundtable. I sometimes think that creates a bit of accountability as well. You want to show up for others. And then again, I think you have a great opportunity to ask your audience what they want, involve them in the planning. So those are some of the techniques that I think could help in that situation. And if your event is purely roundtable and purely networking and things like that, there are some great platforms that help facilitate a lot of those things. A few off the top of my head, there's, Remo, and roundtables and a few others. So so there are some that are literally purely for that kind of event. Spot Me as well is a great one for facilitating those kinds of interactions.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I think I'm conscious we've run over time, but maybe we could squeeze one more question in, and I know people will have to leave away. But Richard McHardy, I know you wanted to ask a question, and I think it's a really good one. So over to you, Richard McHardy.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. I mean, major live events in a physical sense take months to conceive, rehearse, and build and deliver. But what kind of lead time are we looking at for a hybrid equivalent that we've been talking about?
I can take that. I mean, it really depends on the level of production and the level of content, Richard. I mean, we've seen recently with some fellow colleagues where the Amazon Summit that was scheduled to take place had to pivot to virtual in only 5 weeks. And that was going to be an event for thousands of people. And ultimately, the challenge that they had is not enough time to do justice to the content. So what the event ended up being was quite a dry series of talking heads, which was very different to what was the audience would have expected in a live experience. The other thing that is worth noting at the moment as well, because there is such a high demand for virtual platforms and engagement at the moment, they're all starting to quote really long lead times. In some cases, we're seeing lead times of over 3 months. So that's not to say that things need to take that long, but ultimately, the level of production, the level of input, the level of content will extend the level of pre-production time, just like in a live event. Admittedly, you don't have things such as build times and lead times for sets and any of the other sort of physical constraints that you have in the real world. But there's just as much of an investment in time in terms of developing content, developing scripts, developing designs, brands, graphics, etc. So I think people need to be mindful that if they do want to do justice to the same level of engagement that we're trying to create here, there is still an expectation for a level of investment in time, because it would be the same output in a virtual event if you were doing a live event. If you only took 3 weeks to plan it, the quality of the event is not going to be very good. So it's the same kind of example with the virtual world. You should leave enough time as you would for the expectation of the level of production that you're going to deliver.
Thank you so much, Simon, Karen, and Simon. I have learned so much. I know we've had some great comments from our guests today as well. That was a truly informative and very inspiring. I think thinking about the storytelling process and hitting all of those points, just like we expect in our favorite Netflix series, I think that was some fantastic tips. Karen, over to you for a final word, but deep appreciation from British American Business to you all for delivering this informative session.
It's been our absolute pleasure. A lot of fun to put this together. So thanks for that opportunity. And again, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Alice certainly knows how to reach us, but brandsatwork.eu.com or connect to us on LinkedIn. And we're regularly sharing information. In fact, there is a white paper that we published not too long ago that inspired a lot of the thinking in today's presentation. Some of you have maybe already seen that in BAB's distributions, but feel free to reach out to us and request another copy. And if we can help you in any way, we're here. Thank you.
We will share all of your contact details in our follow-up thank you note as well. And as soon as we have the distilled presentation highlights, we'll get those out to everyone. So thank you again. Goodbye.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.